Hi, amazing viewers. Welcome to Christianity over Islam with Shamoun. And on today's debate, Muslims apologist of Jesus as God. Let's watch this debate.
John 5:19. Then Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself." But let's finish it. But what he sees the Father do. For whatever he does, likewise the Son does. The Son does whatever the Father does and only what the Father does. We skip to 21 because of time. For as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, even so the Son gives life to whom he will. The Father judges no one, but has committed all judgment to the Son, that all may honor the Son just as they honor the Father. So you honor me the same way you honor the Father, not less, not like a prophet, but the way you honor him. He who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. And then 25, truly, truly, I say to you, the hour is coming. That's the key phrase. The hour is coming and is now here when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God. They're going to hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. So the hour is coming, the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God and live. And then 28, 29. Do not marvel at this, for the hour is coming, which all who are in the graves will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment. So Jesus says he's not the Father. He can do whatever the Father does in the way the Father does it, give life, raise the dead. And then he says he, the Son, at the hour will raise them out of their graves by his voice. And in John 14:6, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. Truth and life. Now, why is that interesting? Because Old Testament and the Quran, and I'm just speaking the Quran because you guys believe in it, affirm that at the hour, it is God who gives life to the dead and will raise them from their graves. That's in Surah Al-Hajj, chapter 22, verses 6 to 7 of the Quran. It says, Allah, he gives life, and the hour is coming, have no doubt, where he will give life to those in the graves. And even says he's the truth. Allah is the truth, al-haq. So here in the Quran, Allah is called the truth. He gives life to the dead, and at the hour, Allah will raise them from the graves. All of which Jesus says, he's the one who will raise them from their graves by his voice at the hour. He's the one who gives life to the dead, and he is the truth. Even the Quran acknowledges that the Son is not claiming to be a creature, even though he's not the Father, but one with the Father in essence, even though he's not the same person. So that's just to begin with. So if you guys want to engage, ask, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I think I'll take. So I think you spoke for 4 minutes. I'll probably try to do the same. If anyone is timing, it's at 12:21. I should stop. So Sam, thank you for that exposition. However, I think you will agree with me that we see the New Testament as a source for the life and teachings of Jesus Christ differently, very differently. So it is my position that the New Testament does not in any shape and form convey to us true and authentic teachings about Jesus the Christ. I put forward that there are two things that we must hold in mind. I agree with Dan Wallace that we don't have the very words ipsa summa verba of Jesus Christ. We have ipsa summa vox. We don't have any first-hand information, nor do we have any first-party witnesses, which demonstrates that Jesus Christ is God. I listened to your exposition and it's wonderful, but something that I think you missed perhaps, or maybe you didn't think about it, was, well, wait a second. Who is the source of this information, and why should you and I take this to be authoritative? I want to point out, if Jesus Christ is meant to be God, I think that the chapter is Romans chapter 6 verse 9, if I'm not mistaken. Sam can correct me there, where it says that Christ has overcome or defeated death. Death no longer has mastery or dominion over him. Now the question therefore becomes, wait a second, if Sam follows the philosophy of religion, he knows the term maximum greatest being, or the maximum being of all. In this case, for Muslims, and Muslims will be aware of this, we believe that God has the attribute of taking life and giving life. He is the source of life and the source of death. There is no disputation about that. Now, it comes into question, for the Muslims, can Allah lose one of his attributes, and can one of those attributes have mastery over him? This is the case for the Jesus Christ of the New Testament. And so as a monotheist that believes that God's usia cannot be divided, that there is no economic Godhead, I disagree with these principles. And what I would like Sam to do is, does Christ at any one point identify that, one, he's a different person from the Father, and two, that he shares the very same essence as God himself? I know he's going to go to John chapter 10. I don't discount that. But the question I put forward is, does Christ understand, or does he ever give an exposition where he understands the categories of being and he argues for himself Sam's understanding of the nature of God? Now, I have about a minute, 2 minutes left. I understand Sam's position. If he assumes that the New Testament is historical, if he assumes that this is from a real and actual Christ, then I understand his point. But evidently, that's just an assumption, and it has not been qualified. So I would actually ask Sam to qualify that point before relying upon the text in the first place. So I'm going to cut short by 2 minutes. Either Sam or William can engage.
Yeah, that'll work. Okay, let me begin. Number one, whether the New Testament is authentic or not, even though that is an important topic and I want to discuss it with you, it is relevant to the question, does the New Testament teach the deity of Christ? I know you want to talk about who wrote John, and even Daniel Wallace that you cited. The same Daniel Wallace argues quite strongly John wrote John, and he wrote it pre-70 AD because he argues on John chapter 5 verse 2. But that's neither here nor there, because to fairly engage this argument, not only do we appeal to historical evidence, but you as a Muslim, you have to then explain to me what the Quran is referring to when it's talking about the scriptures of the Jews and Christians. But if we open up that can of worms, we're not going to focus on the topic. So I'm going to ignore that for now to focus on the topic. Does the New Testament teach the deity of Christ? And are words ascribed to Jesus where Jesus claims to be God? We can come back, and I want to come back and talk about historical evidence and the Quranic position about the New Testament, as well as whether the manuscript evidence supports that the Quran you have can be a reliable facsimile of what was originally revealed through Muhammad, because you believe he's a prophet, was revealed to him. But let's focus on this issue. You mentioned Paul, and you talked about that Jesus overcame death, and somehow God is the greatest conceivable being, and he can't lose any of his attributes. And I'm assuming by your statement there that you assume that if Jesus died, he lost one of the attributes that he's ever living, and somehow that means he's not the greatest conceivable being. Neither Paul nor John agree with your definition, nor does the Quran, because in John 10:17-18, John 10:17-18 says, "Therefore my Father loves me, because I lay down my life, that I may pick it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down myself. I have the power to lay it down, and I have the power to take it up again. I received this command from my Father." John 2:19-22. There Jesus says, "Destroy this temple, and I will raise it up in 3 days. I will raise it up in 3 days." And the Jews said, "It's taken 46 years to build this temple, and yet you will raise it up in 3 days?" And John says he was talking about the temple of his body. The only way Jesus could raise himself back to life, take back his life, if he was still ever living, he was still conscious, he didn't cease to exist. So implicit in your objection is the assumption that that means cessation of life. That's not a biblical definition, nor is it a Quranic one, because you know your Quran better than I do. Surah Al-Baqarah chapter 2 verse 154 and Surah Al-Imran chapter 3 verses 169 170, it says, "Those who were killed in the way of Allah, the martyrs, the shaheed, do not say they're dead. Nay, they're living, receiving provision from the Lord, even though you don't perceive how." So even the Quran agrees that doesn't mean cessation of life, and that shows how majestic Jesus is. He is the greatest conceivable being, because as the greatest conceivable being, he can take on human nature, experience human death, and still be God, still be ever living, and still raise himself back to life. But I'm going to come back to the original point. The things that Jesus said or attribute to him in John, that he is the one who gives life, he's the one who will raise the dead from their graves at that hour by the sound of his voice, or in John 14:6, he's the truth. All of that is ascribed to Allah alone. So that means, as far as the New Testament is concerned, even the Quran would agree that the things that Jesus is said to have said can only be said by someone who's God in the flesh, even though he's not the Father. Let me give you the verses real quickly to show you he was confirming those scriptures that existed at that time, not some scriptures that didn't exist, that we're just going to make up out of our imagination. Chapter 2 of the Quran, verses 40-44. Chapter 2 of the Quran, verses 89-91. Chapter 2 of the Quran, verse 97. Chapter 2 of the Quran, verse 101. Chapter 2, verse 113. Chapter 2, verse 121. Chapter 3, verses 3 and 4. Chapter 3, verses 113 and 114. Chapter 4, verse 47. Chapter 5, verses 43 and 48.
Welcome back. Hope you've learned from this debate. At the debate, I'm letting the Muslim man to understand that Jesus honored his father, which was written in the book of John, chapter 5, verse 19. Very truly, I tell you, the son can do nothing by himself. He can do only that he sees his father doing. Because whatever the father does, son also does. That means if the father can raise the dead, that means the son can raise the dead. If the father can rise again, that means the son can rise again. which the Muslim man was just confused and was still listening. At this point, Sam making him understand why Jesus raised again from the dead. When Jesus told the Jews in the Bible that I will destroy the temple and in 3 days I will build it back. And the Jews asking Jesus, how can this thing be when they built the temple over a decade? It took them how many years to build the temple, and you are telling us you are going to build the temple back in 3 days. At that particular time, Jesus Christ was speaking about his body after dying, whereas he is going to die and rose again from the dead. And Sam gave him proof, which says in the book of John chapter 10 verse 17, he said, the reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. And when the man saw this, he was marveled. And the man even made a statement there that Jesus Christ disobey every attribute of being a God here on earth, which he pointed out that why would Jesus Christ die? And the man gave him a point, and Sam gave him a clear point here. Sam making understanding the book of same John chapter 10 verse 18, he said, no one take it from me, but he laid down himself according to the will of his Father. The reason why he died was because the will of the Father said, let him die. So every sin that we have sinned will be washed away so we can become new. At this particular time, the Muslim had nothing to prove or nothing to say, and we believe he gave his life to Christ. Now, thank you for watching. Please do it to like, subscribe to our YouTube channels, and share to your loved ones, especially your Muslim friends that have been asking these same questions, have been having these same thoughts, that if Jesus is truly the Son of God.